The next learning objective is to calculate job costs for a service company. Service companies also use a job order costing system. Remember, a service company is a company that sells services such as time, skills, and/or knowledge, instead of products. Examples include accounting firms, hospitals, physical therapy businesses, and colleges. A service company does not have any inventory whatsoever, nor does it have manufacturing costs. But they still need to know concepts from this chapter because they need to know how much it costs to provide a service. If they don't know how much it costs to provide a service, how do they know what to charge their customers? In our example on the next few slides, we will first trace direct labor to a job, and then we will allocate the overhead, such as rent, office supplies, etc., by first computing the predetermined overhead allocation rate, like we did before, then allocating overhead to the various completed jobs. Then we will use the total cost of the job to help us determine the price we will charge for the job. To illustrate the concepts of a job order costing system for a service business, we'll use the law firm Dewey, Cheatham & Howe. Because each client's needs will vary greatly, the company uses a job order costing system since they are providing different services for each client or job. Usually, the most significant cost for a service business is direct labor. This is different from a manufacturer whose largest expense is usually cost of goods sold. But of course, a service company like Dewey, Cheatham & Howe won't have inventory, so they don't have cost of goods sold. That's why direct labor is usually the largest cost for a service company. Because of this, all the attorneys for Dewey, Cheatham & Howe will record their time on a weekly labor time record, which is tracked electronically. So let's say one of their attorneys, Jeffrey Winger, for the week of May 19th, worked on job 719 for 14 hours and job 720 for 26 hours. And he enters this time information into his weekly labor time record on the computer. So we are going to use job order costing for job number 719 to see how much those 14 hours cost the law firm and how much they should charge. So our goal is to determine the cost of job 719, which involved 14 hours of the lawyer's time. We need to calculate the direct labor cost and the indirect cost, which is the job's portion of the overhead costs. Notice we also have an additional data box, which we will use later. At the beginning of the year, the law firm must estimate their overhead, also known as indirect costs. So they estimate their office rent, cost of the support staff, the law library, advertisements, and office supplies for a total of $300,000 of indirect or overhead costs. These are also called period costs, meaning they are not associated with making a product and therefore will be expensed in the year they were incurred. Now, just like we did for manufacturing overhead, we need to calculate the predetermined overhead allocation rate. The formula for this is expected indirect costs divided by expected direct labor hours. We've already calculated $300,000 of indirect costs, so we divide by the 10,000 expected direct labor hours. This is the number of hours a firm thinks the attorneys will work, and we get it from our additional data box. This results in $30 of indirect costs per direct labor hour. This means that for every hour that an attorney works on a job, the job gets an additional $30 of the overhead costs added to the cost of the job. Now our next task is to calculate the direct labor hourly rate for the attorney. As you can see in the additional data box, our attorney's salary and benefits for the year are a combined $100,000. Now we simply need to divide that by the number of work hours in a year to get the hourly direct labor rate. Since the company has 40-hour work weeks, and there are 50 work weeks in a year, assuming they get 2 weeks off, that gives us a total of 2,000 work hours per year. So we take $100,000 of total salary and benefits for the attorney and divide by 2,000 work hours in a year, and we get an hourly rate of $50 per hour of direct labor. This means it costs the firm $50 of direct labor per hour to have Jeffrey Winger work on the case. The next step is to calculate the total direct labor cost for job 719. To do so, we simply take the $50 per hour of direct labor rate, multiply it by the 14 hours it took to complete the job, and that gives us $700 of direct labor costs. Then we need to calculate the indirect costs for job 719. Remember, these indirect costs are just the estimated overhead of $300,000 for the year, spread out over an estimated 10,000 direct labor hours, which gave us $30 of overhead, also known as indirect costs per hour of direct labor for that job. So we take the 14 hours it took to complete the job, multiply it by the $30 of indirect costs per direct labor hour, and we get $420 of indirect costs, for a total cost of $1,120 for job 719. Our next step is to calculate the total hourly rate, which combines direct labor and indirect labor costs. Direct labor was $50 per hour, and we add $30 of indirect labor to get a total hourly cost of $80 per hour. Now we can calculate the company's price per hour that it will charge the customer. Before we can do that, we have to calculate the markup. That is simply the total cost times the markup percentage. Per our additional data box, the company wants to mark up its price 75% above its cost. So we take $80 of total cost per hour times the 75% markup percentage, and we get a $60 per hour markup. So the price the company will charge the customer is the total cost of $80 per hour plus the $60 per hour markup, giving a final price of $140 per hour. This means that the firm should charge clients $140 per hour.